go.
Oh, wow. Now that stopped, or is that going?
If you look in the top right, you should see some...
Oh, yes, you're off.
Right, we're good.
You're off. Well, and they're off.
That's a good start.
Yeah. Gareth,
Hello.
hello. Do you want to give us a little bit of background to the whole project?
Yes. In 1992, it was the last year of my degree at Nottingham, and we, as part of what we were doing, we did a placement, and because I'd been involved with Lostock Hall Youth Centre and Open Space over the years, I wanted to do a project there, and I'd come up with this idea because it was Guild Year that year, 1992, of making a time capsule with a group of people that I was involved with, because really I was getting to the end of college and I was really about to move on from there. I was like 22, so moving away from that situation, and I decided to stay in Nottingham. So I wanted to make this kind of time capsule where we could record some aspects of our lives, and what I wanted to do was to make something that wasn't just about the newspaper from that week or the #1 single. I wanted to make something that was more about our lives. And there's two things that influenced that really. The first thing that influenced it was a documentary series that still runs now, and I've followed it throughout my life because I think it's fantastic, which is called Up, and it started as 7 Up, and it went to 14 Up, and 21 Up, and 28 Up, and I think they've just done 56 earlier this year, and it's amazing, it's a fantastic documentary, and I was always really fascinated by that, and I absolutely loved it. But there was also a series on Channel 4 at the time called Star Test, and they would have random questions that celebrities would have to answer from a kind of multi-choice thing, and they had this kind of like user interface on the screen that they clicked to choose their question. So some of the questions that we asked I kind of built in from that, but what I wanted to do was to capture a flavour of us then rather than the world then. It was about the group, I think, rather than the external world maybe.
And what did you choose to put in the box?
Not as much as I think I was self-conscious because I was kind of running the project, but I kind of I didn't put a great deal in, but there are a couple of things that are significant. I think at the time I really love comics, and I always have, and at the time I wanted to be a comics artist, and I'd written this project, this comic that I did at university and got printed there, so I put that in because that was the first comic that I made, and it was right at the end of university, and after I left university I went on to carry on making those comics for about a year afterwards till I couldn't afford to do it anymore. So that's really nice to see that. I do have other copies of it, so it's not like it's the first time I've seen it in 20 years, but it is really nice to open up the box and read that stuff and just see the drawing. And also see that my drawing's got loads better since, so I'm really pleased about that. So that's really nice to see. But there was another thing that we did in the Star Test questions where we asked about significant images or memories or photographs over the years. And I don't have it here, it's not in the box, but it is on the wall at my mum and dad's, and I see it all the time when I'm up theirs. And I've put the photograph that I treasure the most is a photograph of me and my brother with both sets of my grandparents, because they were all still alive at the time, and I think it was one of their wedding anniversaries, and there's a 50th wedding anniversary banner blue tacked to the wall behind, and we're all sat there grinning, and it's a really treasured photograph. And obviously in that 20 years there's only my nana who's still alive now, but at the time it felt quite important for some reason to have got to 22, which was the age I had then, and still have all my grandparents around. It felt that was an important part of family at that time for me. So that's, whilst it's not in the box, it's referenced in the box. Is one of the key things that I want to hold from there, I think. I've also written about videos that I like. I've written Fly on the Wall, that kind of things like Our House, and there was a documentary series at the time called Our House. I was quite, again, like 7 Up, kind of quite interested in that, just the documentation of people and their lives. So that's about the size of what I've stored in there. Some pictures of me with really long hair and pulling a face. I did a lot of pulling faces and having long hair in those days.
Is there anything you wished you'd put in there?
It's really hard to say because it's hard to know what's in there, but I do have a few things, objects that seem irrelevant that have followed me around over the years, that when I find them they kind of jolt me a little bit. Or I've got this this comic, and I do this deliberately now because I've got this comic. It's a Love and Rockets novel, graphic novel and I bought it years ago. And for some reason, it always ends up in the bottom of the box. And whenever I move house and I unpack, I find it and I read it again, and I really like it. And I've got to the point where I don't put it on the bookshelf now. I put it back in the box so that next time I move house, I can find it. So I thought I'd put more in. So I think I expected more objects, more surprise objects. But in terms of the descriptions of me and what I've talked about in the interviews and stuff like that, are no surprise actually. I remember those things. I remember those things quite vividly. The actual things like that. One thing that I am really pleased with putting in the box is the birthday card for Paul. I think that's a really lovely little moment, and it was quite a strange and sad moment, and not sad but kind of weird moment yesterday, because I think that really hit us all, that birthday card, because it was specifically tied to a time. They weren't just objects placed in a box.
So, on Saturday morning, you were sat at home in Nottingham.
Yeah.
Got up, had your breakfast, got to the car,
I did.
come up here.
Mm-hmm.
What was going through your mind?
Not a lot actually, but in the time running up to it, it had been. I think this, I don't know if this is the same for everybody, it wasn't so much a dread, but there's a certain trepidation because it's there then. I think over the years I've thought about the time capsule and thought about where it is and what's going to be in it and all that kind of stuff, but it didn't seem like it was going to be opened. So on the day, I was actually really excited about it. So on Saturday morning, specifically, I was really excited about it. But in the week before that, I didn't want anyone to be disappointed, and I was really worried that someone would get there and actually their stuff wasn't in the box or something like that. So when David came last night, who was peripheral to the project, and he opened up his box, and we opened up the box, and he had put something in there, even though he thought he hadn't. That was really nice. It was like everybody got a present. It was like the secret present your mum hides under the tree in case anybody comes visiting. So that was really nice that happened. So I think, yeah, yesterday I was really excited. In the week, I'd kind of had all those kind of neurotic worries about it.
Do you have any regrets about doing the project?
Do I have any regrets about doing the project? No, not at all, really. I think one thing that's changed over the years, though, is I've become more private as a person over the years, and I think even though so as that happened, I think I started to, over the years, have spent time worrying about what's in there and how I would present that stuff back out, but because but that's just, that's just neurosis. It's just because everything's really nice, everything's fine, but I guess you think. But I don't have any regrets about it. I think it's been really important. I suppose my one regret, and it's not so much about the box or the content, is that Ron Blankenship, who was the person who was kind of mentored this when I was younger, that I'd lost touch with him over the years, and I really wanted him to be here as part of this, but obviously he died earlier this year, and that's been a really sad part of it, is to reflect on that. And I guess for me, I just hope that even though he can't be here, that this is somehow, it's a kind of celebration of him to some extent.
Yeah, you preempted my last question there.
All right.
Good man. No, good man. No, it's good. So, last question then. What do you think you've learnt from this experience? What will you take away from it?
That's really hard to say. they're not things I've learned. I was going to say that things are important, whether it's a bit of tape with leg hair stuck on it, or a comic that you've made, or some sunglasses that you've put in there and stuff like that. That there's that weight of those kind of objects that we keep in our minds. I think what I have learned from it, and I wrote about it a little bit on the blog, really, was that you shouldn't wait that 20 years. I think I waited to see Ron, and then he wasn't there and couldn't be there because he died, and I kind of think it's fine to make this stuff up and put it in a box and store it away for 20 years, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be dealing with the things that are in that box throughout your life. You're not locking them up so that you can ignore them. You need to lock them up to mark a moment, I think. And I think that's it, really.
That's perfect.
Just not to not to put things in compartments, I think, and lock them away, I think. So what I learned is you shouldn't make time capsules. I mean, it's been really positive, but what I mean is that just because they're in that box doesn't mean you can ignore them, I think.
Thank you.
Thanks.